Like it or not, as designers, our portfolios are essential to our success. They showcase everything from our accomplishments to who we like to work with, and even how we approach our creative projects. And they're also incredibly hard to design. Putting your entire career into a few engaging case studies is a tall task that even the best designers struggle with.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
That's why in this video, I'll be reviewing a ton of incredible viewer portfolios to share their inspiring work, to highlight best practices, to call out pitfalls to avoid, and give you a ton of tips that you can take to apply to your own portfolio sites. So whether you're looking to land a new full-time job, you're trying to move your way up the career ladder, or you're just trying to attract more freelance clients, you're gonna wanna stick around to the end of this one. Let's get into it. All right, so the first portfolio we're checking out today is Matthew Whiting. Matthew is a product and visual designer based out of New Orleans. So I really like the first impression you're making here. You have some great white space. You have some really nice hierarchy here. I like the typography. So it's very clear when I come here, I'm looking at the logo animation, I'm reading hello, then I'm reading your elevator pitch, then I'm looking at the work. So it's very well laid out. It's very clear what I'm supposed to do. I'm not overwhelmed. And I really like that you have the work above the fold here. So it encourages me to scroll down to check out some of your case studies. I really enjoy your animated logo up here as well. I could see that being overwhelming for a lot of portfolios where maybe some of the logos wouldn't be as good as others, but I think you've done a really nice job of all these marks are well done, they're fun, they're interactive. So I think that's a really nice touch. It's also a nice thing because it can be difficult as designers to create our own logo, to settle on one that really encapsulates who we are. So I think that's kind of a fun way to get around that, to where you don't have to settle on one. You have like a brand system that's your initials and like 20 different formats. So I think that's really fun, and it adds a little bit of animation and engagement to the homepage as well. Scrolling down here, I like that you're telling us like what each project is. So this is product design. You're telling us who it's for, like a little bit of a blurb about the project, what the deliverables were. So before I even click into the project, I know what I'm getting myself into. So if I'm here for product design, I know this case study is relevant to me. It's not just an image where I kind of have to guess and click in and kind of see if I'm in the right place. You're giving me all of that information up front to where I can make an educated decision and know that this project is one I want to look at. As far as the thumbnail goes, I think this is a really nice, beautiful thumbnail. It's really showing off the UI. I like the darkness. It kind of fades off into a gradient. So I think it's a really well done thumbnail. So it does engage me to want to click into it. That's a really important thing in a portfolio, is make sure your thumbnails are really well done, that they're really engaging. They make people want to view the case study. Sometimes case studies can be a little bit dry. So using really engaging imagery, especially as designers, really goes a long way. So I think that's a really nice job there as well. Same thing here. This is a beautiful thumbnail. You're showing off the UI of the website. You're showing off a few of those like zoomed in UI elements of the calendar, of these little cards here. And then you've put it on an art directed background that matches the project. It's outdoorsy, it's mountains, it's travel. So immediately I've been on this website for 5 seconds and I'm learning a lot, right? I know that you understand kind of how to encapsulate a project very quickly. You have a good eye for design. You understand hierarchy and layout of the different elements. You're giving me information before I even click into it, so you understand like what your end user is actually looking for. So very quickly, again, a lot of really nice telltale signs here that you're a quality designer and that I'm interested in working with you. So scrolling down here, maybe this one sticks out as maybe not as strong as some of the other thumbnails I've seen so far. The other ones have been really well art directed and very realistic. They look like photography almost. And then this one's very flat. So as far as kind of curating your thumbnails to be similar, to feel very art directed, this one's maybe sticking out to where it feels a little bit out of place next to the other ones. So maybe this thumbnail could be brought in line with kind of the same ethos and the quality of the other thumbnails. Maybe these are like more realistic phone mock-ups. The background isn't just flat, it's a bit more realistic. That could be something to think about there. And then down here at the bottom, I like that you just have a very simple footer. It allows me to jump through projects really quickly. So That's great on a portfolio website where there's not a lot of pages. A lot of people just kind of leave the footer blank, but putting your work down here in the footer does make it really nice to be able to hop around when I'm in a case study. I want to move to the next one. So I really like that, and something I don't see enough. Beyond that, say hello, a contact, a link, your resume, and LinkedIn. I think that's perfect for a portfolio website. You want to make it easy for people to get in touch with you, to kind of connect with you professionally on social, to see your resume if you're looking for full-time gigs. So I love that footer. It's very simple, but it's accomplishing the goal. So really well done there. And then let's go ahead and scroll back up and click into one of these projects. So this is Access Outreach SaaS, designing a connected experience for labs and medical facilities. You're the lead product and motion designer. So it's pretty straightforward, to the point. I think that's great. You're giving us just enough information to kind of pique our interest. And then I love this hero image you have here that's animated. I think that's doing a really nice job of engaging me, of drawing me in, of making me want to keep scrolling through this project. So that's something to call out there, that this is exactly what you should be doing. I see a lot of designers just start with like sketches. They start at the very beginning of the project. And while it's great to include that sort of concept work and backstory, you want to be starting with something really engaging, the finished product, a motion designed piece to grab attention, to make people want to keep scrolling through the case study, because a lot of case studies do have a lot of text that can be a little bit dry. So again, you want to hook them. You want to make sure that they're interested in looking at the full thing. So great job there. I love this. Okay, and now you're getting into more of that nitty gritty. So you hooked us with that first image. I was really interested in what I saw there. And so now you're giving us all of the information about the project, as far as who the client is, who the team was that worked on this project, the brief. I love that you have the goals here. I think this is really nice that you have them broken down into bullet points. When it comes to case studies like this, a lot of the times people have paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. And while it's great to provide that context, it is challenging as a hiring manager to sit there when you're looking through 100 or 200 portfolios in a day to read 50 paragraphs on a portfolio. It's not really realistic, right? So understanding that and breaking it down into digestible tidbits like this, so it's bullet points, it's short paragraphs, it makes it chunked down. It makes it really easy for someone to come in here and actually read your information, which is what you want, right? So I think that's really well done. I do think for me, the text is a little bit too small. I think that is maybe discouraging people from actually reading this text, just because the point size is so tiny that it is a little bit challenging to read a larger body of text, like over here in contribution. So maybe upticking that point size by 1 or 2 points might help as far as legibility goes, but I like what you have here. And then I love that you have outcomes here, right? I mean, any project that you're doing, the outcome is the most important part. When a hiring manager is looking through a portfolio, they're thinking about, how did this designer impact the business? What sort of metrics were they tracking? What sort of results did they generate? Was it tied into profit, revenue? Were they getting clicks? What was the outcome that they were looking to achieve? And so here you don't have any metrics, and I think that's pretty common, and that's okay. If you do have metrics, definitely include them in there. If you don't, I really like what you have here as far as your outcome, where you say it resulted in a user-validated design framework. It demonstrates the project's value and market potential. It played a key role in securing investor interest and showcased a clear path to execution and scalability. Then you're also talking about finalizing the design system and a style guide, providing a solid foundation for future design. So again, I think this is a really well-written outcome that is not metric-based. Again, if it was metric-based, I'd make it even stronger, but a lot of designers, we can't get those metrics for certain projects. So I think this is a really well done example of how to approach it when you can't get the numbers. So now, after drawing us in with that motion version of the UI, we're seeing the still version, which is nice to let us kind of dive into the details without it moving all around on us. So it's really clean work. I like that you're kind of seeing that graph that was animated before, how it lives in the actual UI itself. Showing off a different screen here, putting it at an angle, so that adds some visual interest. It makes it feel a little bit more engaging, adding the gradient and some lighting here. You're taking this really clean work, you're angling it, you're art directing it, you're making it really approachable and interesting to look at visually. And so I think that's a really strong example of how to take a dry subject matter, make it engaging, make it case study worthy. So great job with that. And then breaking out some of these UI elements. So instead of just showing them in the context of it, you're kind of breaking it out and showing off the fine details. So that's really great too. You're showing the zoomed out view of the full picture. You're showing some medium shots, and then you're showing some really zoomed in close-ups to show off the finer details. So that's exactly what you want to do in a portfolio and a case study. Show the forest and show the trees, right? So I think you've done a really nice job of doing that here as well. Then you've got the dark and light UI. So that's great that you've kind of found a way to animate that to make it really visual for us. This is nice to show the scroll. That can be a challenge sometimes to show off, like a live dashboard isn't always feasible because it needs a login or something like that. So doing a nice clean recording of it, make it into a GIF so that way, even if the website goes down or if someone edits it after you leave, you still have the version that you designed in its perfect form on your case study. So great job there, and definitely a best practice to think about. And then this is really nice to see kind of the brand system, the colors, the fonts that you've thought through, all the different pieces and cards and the way the shadows interact and the iconography. So really impressed with the work that I'm seeing here. So great job there. And then I like that once we get to the bottom, you're just kind of letting us hit next into the next project. So that's a great best practice as well, is at the end of a project, don't just leave people hanging. Don't make them scroll back to the top or go back to the homepage. Let them keep going. If they like what they see, you want to keep them on the website for as long as possible. So just giving them a way to do that very easily is a great way to accomplish that. So nice job with that. All right, so going back to the homepage here, let's check out this Nike 101 iOS app. So this is interesting where this project has a centered header, whereas the other projects have a left aligned header. That's not a big thing. It's just kind of, it's interesting that it's not consistent. I'm guessing maybe you did it because this image is smaller for the hero image and it maybe looked a bit odd to have the header over here to the left. Maybe to keep it consistent, you could add like a background color to this image. So every header is like left aligned just across all your case studies to keep it consistent. Not a big deal, but just something to think about if you did want to keep all of your headers consistent, which usually is kind of like a nice usability best practice when someone's viewing a website, that the information always lives in the same place on the case studies. This image that you have here at the top for the hero is nice. I would say it's maybe less engaging than the last one was, where this one's just kind of like a flat on iPad. It's not animated. I'm not exactly sure what you did for this. It's just kind of a login page, so it's a little bit less UI heavy. So it's a nice looking image, but it's not quite as strong as your last hero image. It kind of makes me want to scroll this project less than the last one. So I do think maybe you could strengthen the hero image here. I do really like the subtle shadows you have here on the iPad. That's really clean, the way it's fading into the background. So I think that is a nice touch there. And then again, I like that you're kind of starting things off with some context, some information about the project, your role, and the outcomes that you're able to achieve. Again, it would be great to include some metrics here, some stats about how the UI performed, what results did you see, things like that. So that's something to think about if you can get some of that information for your case studies. So coming down here and checking out the actual work, it feels very on brand for Nike. It's very clean. It's fun to include some of the like brand photography in here just because Nike does have such incredible brand photography. It's smart to lean on it to help you kind of break up the portfolio piece. These phone mockups feel a little bit out of place with your other mockups. So all the other ones have those really nice subtle shadows on the back. They feel more realistic, like they're floating in space. Whereas these phones just feel very flat. They feel like they're not even really mockups. It's just kind of a screenshot on a rounded rectangle. So I think you could take these phones to the next level by just, again, kind of putting them at an angle, making them feel more realistic, taking that same approach you took on the previous project where you're really just making the mockups really beautiful and engaging. I think that approach would work well for this screenshot here. Kind of the same thing for this one. Again, it's just a very flat kind of iPad shape. You could put that in actual mockup. I like that you're showing off the flow that you've thought through. It's great to see some of the UX approach that you've discovered here. Is a little bit challenging to read these headlines. They are quite small, so maybe using a more legible font there. Maybe don't use all caps. slightly larger point size could be helpful. Overall, again, super clean work. I really like the UI UX that you've got going throughout. It's very easy to understand. It's digestible. I could see this working really well in the actual app itself. These email designs are really nice. They feel very tied into the UI that you've developed for the app. And so that's definitely coming through even in the emails. So you're understanding how to establish a brand system, how to apply that to different touch points. So that's really strong. This is great to show an animation of the actual app itself, like walking through all the different screens to see how the static shots you've showed us so far, how do they come to life? How do those live in the real world? Again, this one might benefit just from living on a bit of an iPad mock-up here. Currently, like the white on white of the top of the iPad on the background gets a little bit lost. It also helped just add that context and really drive home that this is an iPad app. So yeah, this is a great project. I think it's really strong. Your UI UX is really shining through. I do think as far as mock-ups goes, you could kind of carry over that great work you had in your first portfolio project, add some more close-ups, add some angles, add some lighting, add some more realistic iPad mock-ups instead of just flat screens. But really nitpicking there, I think your portfolio is incredible. Again, I love the playfulness of this logo. I can tell you're a very talented UI UX designer, so that's coming through. So really nice job, Matthew. Great portfolio. Hey guys, I hope you're finding the video valuable so far and enjoying all the work. If you are, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. As a small content creator, every single engagement counts, and I really appreciate it. And for those of you looking to take your design careers to the next level, be sure to check out the shop over on artfulruckus.com. You can get a free portfolio checklist to download. I've got templates, resources, frameworks in there. You can even set up a one-on-one portfolio review with yours truly. Huge shout out to those of you who have already shown your support by picking something up in the shop. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to the reviews. So the next portfolio we'll take a look at is Stephen Lloyd. Stephen Lloyd is a global art director shaping high-impact brands across digital, print, and identity. It's nice that it's just very clear. The second I come to your site, I know exactly who you are, what you do, your job title, your approach, the sort of deliverables that you create. So great job of just kind of like having an elevator pitch, making sure I'm in the right place. Having the client list scroll here is a great way to build social proof to show that you've worked with these really big brands, that other brands like those can trust you to do great work. So I like that you have social proof on your website. Definitely something I think more designers should be including. I do think this top area could use some more white space. Right now it feels a little bit cramped where you've got your nav, this elevator section, the client list, and then your work. It's all very compact. So I think maybe using some white space there to break things up, make it a little bit more pleasant on the eyes could be a slight nitpick there. And then also you've got like your work that goes full screen, which is nice, but then this top area is kind of like boxed into a smaller box. So maybe making the top area go full screen as well and thinking about how that is laid out to match the bottom section might just make it feel a bit more together. Whereas right now this top section feels pretty disjointed from the work. And then like the edges of this boxed area here get cut off when the logos animate on, and it doesn't quite align with like the grid of the work down here below it. So that might be another area to clean up there. Looking at your thumbnails, these are really engaging, really well art directed photos. I like that some of them are animated. It makes you really want to click into all of these to kind of learn more about the projects. I like the hover effects you have here. So it talks about the client, it talks about your role, it talks about the deliverables. So before I even click into these, I know exactly what I'm going to get into, make sure it's the type of project that I'm personally interested in looking at. So let's take a look at this T-Mobile project here. So I love this format of headline, beautiful image that draws us in, and then directly into the overview, the goal, and your role. I think that's the exact approach I like to see looking at a portfolio, is just kind of giving us everything that we need to understand what we're going to see, having a really nice image that draws us in, that makes us want to scroll and learn more, and then starting to get into the information itself. Normally, I'm not the biggest fan of starting with like concept work for your hero image, but I think this image is so well done and that the concept work is so high quality that it actually works to be the hero image. Normally, sometimes you see like sketchbooks on an iPhone photo or something like that. and it doesn't really draw you in. But again, I think these sketches are so nice and this photo is so well done that it absolutely works as a hero image. So kudos to you there. These are really incredible storyboards. So again, you've done a great job of making the concept work part of like a finished piece by laying them out in this way, by taking a really nice top-down photo, of being such a great illustrator. So I think that is a really strong piece here. And then I love that you have the outcome, although I will say the outcome feels a little bit vague. It's more just kind of like about the feelings of like having a successful project that they loved and happy clients and things like that, which is great. But for an outcome section, I would try to make it a little bit more concrete, using metrics, talking about like the actual results of it. And then also another thing to think about there is you do talk about like happy clients. So instead of just saying that, it would be great to have like a testimonial from the client that's really talking about how happy they actually are, right? So just adding some more social proof there instead of just saying they're happy, really showing how happy they were, showing how successful this campaign was. That could be a way to take the outcome section to the next level. And then taking a work at the actual video itself here, we can definitely see how the storyboards are coming through. Those like pink illustrations, the pink elements are popping up the same way we saw in the concept artwork. So yeah, that's great to get to see everything kind of come to life that you've been talking about throughout the case study so far. So for this second video, it's a little bit odd that there's none of the pink elements that we saw in that first video that we saw in all the storyboards. This one feels like it's different, that it's kind of lacking those elements. So maybe talking through why this one didn't have that coming through, just to help viewers understand like why that decision was made, why they don't have alignment from that standpoint. That could be helpful just to understand why that was a solution that was chosen. And then down here at the bottom, it's nice that you've kind of given us an escape hatch to go back to your portfolio. It might be nice to kind of curate some projects here. If I really liked this T-Mobile video campaign, here's 2 other projects that are similar to that. They're also like videos that I storyboarded that are in that same space, just to really curate the experience for each viewer that's on this website, make it easy for them to keep going, make it easy for them to see more work that they like, instead of going back and like sifting through it. It's not a big deal, but just a small UX thing that could help make it easier to keep going on your site for a bit longer. Let's take a look at this Nike brand identity you've got here. For this one, it's interesting that the like layout of the whole case study changed. I really liked the approach you had before with like the headline, beautiful hero image, and then the context. Like the type treatment's different and kind of the layout is different. So that might be something to kind of make them more cohesive, is just making sure that the layout stays the same from case study to case study. I do really like this image you have of your sketches here. Like these are incredible sketches, like they look like they're finished products. So it's crazy that you just doodled these in your sketchbook. It looks like the mark you designed here is really clean. It does get a little compressed and JPEG-y when you blow it up to full size. So I would recommend making these a bit higher quality from a resolution standpoint for people that do click into them, just so they're not blurry. For this shirt mock-up here, it feels like the logo is a little bit challenging on the black polo for me. Like the logo's getting a little bit lost. The arrow really sticks out, but then you have the double Nike logos, so maybe like a different color polo here would help the logo stand out a little bit. These are nice mock-ups here of the Moleskine notebooks. It's cool. It looks like you did like some full-on brand guidelines for this logo design, so that's really cool to see. I think that'd be cool to see more of that. So you obviously created some brand guidelines here. You're just kind of showing it in a beauty shot. I think that's great, but maybe pulling some close-up detail shots from the brand guidelines, showing off a few of those spreads that you're really proud of, that you think really show off the work you did. I think that would be great. So I think this is incredible work. I like the mark you've made here. I think you could expand upon this case study from a visual standpoint quite a bit, just to really show how it lives, how it was applied to different materials and things like that. Showing off some more like close-ups of it, things like that. I think that would really help bring it to life. And then clicking over to your About page, this is a really nice approach you have here, where it's just a nice professional headshot of yourself. You're giving us like a career overview of your approach, the places you've worked, where you are currently. So I think this is really nice for people that want to come here and learn more about you, your professional career. And then you're even kind of giving us a resume here, talking about each position that you've held, the bullet point achievements from each of your positions. So This is really nice kind of from an SEO perspective for people searching for some of these things, but also for people looking to hire you for full-time roles. They don't even need to really see your resume. They can just hop into your about page and really get into the nitty-gritty of your career at each step. I think this is an expertly done about page, so this is a great example for anyone that is apprehensive about adding their own about page or isn't sure what to put. I definitely think it's a valuable piece to have on your portfolio, and this is a great example to check out. And then even having a contact page, I think this is really nice, where a lot of designers just have like a link that opens up your Gmail. I do think it is a more pleasant experience to have an actual contact form on your website. It can lead to like getting more spam messages from bots, which is annoying, but I think it is a more pleasant experience. I like to give people the option of either or, so I think you've done that here with this button down here at the bottom or this contact in the top right, so I really like that approach as well. So overall, Steven, I can tell that you really know what you're doing. You're an expert art director. The work is really impressive. I like the simplicity of the website. I like that you do have this like pop of the neon green color in here. It definitely adds something to the visual interest. So I think this is a great example that a lot of designers can pull from. So thank you so much for sharing. All right, so next up we have Solwhi Park. First impression, this is a really impactful image. I kind of get immediately an idea of your approach to design. It's very like modern. It's a little bit brutalist. You've got like the fluted glass effect going, the black and white and red. I kind of understand your approach to design right off the bat. I do think this image being the hero is maybe a little bit random, where I get that you're like introducing yourself, so it's an ID badge, so I think that's clever. But I do think like actually reading graphic designer and 3D generalist, it's so small down there that I think people might kind of skip over this without realizing your intent was to showcase yourself, your name, and your job title. So I think it's a clever idea, but maybe zooming in a bit more, maybe it's just 2 badges that focuses more on the job title. So that way people don't think this is just like an image of something random that you've designed. This is intentionally like the introduction to your website. Maybe even animating this to where it's like a lanyard that moves around, it flips back and forth. I think you could take this idea, which I really like, and kind of take it to the next level to make it actually accomplish the goal of like introducing yourself, having a bit of an elevator pitch, talking about your approach and what you do. So something to think about there. So scrolling down, we get into like projects, case studies. I'm not entirely sure that this about section is needed for projects. It feels a little bit self-explanatory. You're just saying like, this is my work. It has 3D animation. It shows some things in the real world usage. It's client commissions and personal studies. Click a tile to view the brief. I feel like that stuff is kind of implied. That's kind of like the UX best practice of portfolio design. So I'm not sure you need the like introduction instructions here. You could probably lose that and just jump straight into the visuals. Visually, it's definitely very striking. A lot of these have some great engaging thumbnails. I like the use of motion, really draws you in. The projects are really interesting looking to where I definitely want to click into these. I want to learn more. Some of these thumbnails down here at the end are getting a little bit grainy. They're getting a little bit like JPEG-y. So I think maybe the amount of motion is maybe causing you to over optimize some of these to where they're getting a little bit too low quality and JPEG-y, to where maybe having less case studies could be one way to accomplish that while keeping the quality still high, or maybe just finding a way to better optimize these videos to where they are still really high quality but still play at a good frame rate and don't take a long time to load. From a style standpoint, again, I can see you have a very distinct style. There's a lot of these like futuristic cyberpunk faces opening up and things like that. So I think that's nice, where if a client is coming here looking for a very specific aesthetic, a very specific style, they know they're in the right place. They know that's your approach, that they should hire you for that type of work. So I think that's a really powerful thing when you can establish a style that you really enjoy working in and can support that with your clientele. I think overall you have a lot of projects here. So assuming some of these might not be as strong as some of the other ones, I'm not going to go through all of them to where I can tell you necessarily which ones those are, but overall, I generally say to aim for between 6 to 8 projects in a portfolio. Usually when you're going beyond that, unless you're 15, 20 years into your career, beyond 10 projects, you tend to be showing off work that's not your strongest, or maybe it's really old or something like that. So I generally recommend sticking between 6 and 8. Make sure you're only showing off your best projects In a portfolio, it's only as strong as your worst project, right? So maybe there's an opportunity there to kind of pare this down to really figure out which 6, 8 pieces are your strongest that really show off what you can do, and really focus on building out those case studies. Focus a little bit less on the quantity of work you have here. All right, so clicking into your Vora project here. Off the bat, I like that you're starting us off with context about the project and the client. I do think it's a bit challenging to read. So over here where you have name, client, category, and year, it's all pretty far away from the corresponding text. And so distance tells us they might not be related. So the eye kind of gets confused when looking at those. So I think making it more clear that these are related to each other. I also think kind of treating them in a different way than you're treating the body copy would be nice to, again, create separation, create hierarchy between those two different elements. As far as your body font here, it's pretty challenging to read just from how tight the tracking is for all the text. So a lot of these letters are running together. So again, not super pleasant from a body copy perspective. So maybe give it a bit more space. And then also as far as how many words you have on a line here, this is a lot of words for a single line. It makes the human eye not want to read it. So I think if you kind of made the lines a bit shorter, I usually aim for a max of like 10 to 12 words per line just to keep it easy to read, to keep it skimmable. So I would probably give this a bit more padding to accomplish that, to make the context easier to read. And then as far as the content you actually have written out here, it feels a little bit focused on deliverables. I would say this area is better used for talking about the goal, talking about results. As far as talking about like what fonts you chose and the color palette and stuff like that, I think you can do that later on in the project when you're talking about those individual aspects. So this top area, I would focus more on things like the overview, goals, and outcomes and things like that. I like the logo design that you have here. It's really funky. It feels very like techie but organic at the same time. It is challenging to read. I thought this was like Voa, but now I'm realizing that it's actually supposed to say Vora. So the R isn't really coming through for me. So it looks like this is a passion project. So maybe something to think about there. Maybe take a stab at redesigning that to make the R a bit more legible in that logo. But I do like that you're showing us the color palette. You're thinking through the brand system. A lot of the times with a passion project, it's easy to kind of skip over that sort of stuff because it's a little bit more dry. It's a little bit more in the weeds. You just want to design something that's really fun and looks great. But it's really nice that you've taken the time to take a step back, think through what the brand color palette is, and then I'm sure we'll see that come through. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into what I would consider like the overview of the company, which might be better to start with instead of this more granular overview of like the fonts and stuff like that. So I might switch the location of these two and then add some information about like the actual like outcomes that you're looking for and the goals and things like that as well. Taking a look at some of the images here, this is a really nice mock-up that you've chosen. I like that the like terrain really matches like that techie organic vibe that you've established with the logo. I love the green glow off the shoes, matches that Volt color that you've established in your color palette. This is another nice high quality mock-up you've chosen here. I really like this mock-up. It feels, again, very on brand. It's very like cyberpunk. It's like at night, it's very techie with all the antennas sticking out of it. It does feel like the screens maybe could feel a little bit more realistic. There's not lighting on the screens necessarily. It feels like they're kind of sat on top of the mock-up instead of part of the mock-up. So that's something that's really important, is if you're gonna make it look like it's a part of an environment, spend that time to make sure the lighting is right, that the screens are glowing. I think that would add to like the cyberpunk look. We see that there's like a glow coming off of the other lights, so naturally the screen would have a glow as well. So maybe some tweaks that you could make there to make it a bit more realistic looking. I think kind of the same thing on this one. Again, I think it's a nice mock-up that you've chosen. I like the design of the actual billboards themselves. Just maybe making it a bit less saturated would make it kind of match the mock-up. Making sure that grain is replicated on top of the billboard. It's very grainy out here in the sky. So just kind of making those slight tweaks to really take this to the next level to make it look super realistic, I think would help drive that home. This is cool to start seeing the colorways kind of like come into their own, seeing how they exist on these different backgrounds. These are really nice 3D render of the shoes as well. They're very attractive. So I really like where the project is going. It does start to feel like a bit of mock-up fatigue here, where we're kind of seeing the same sorts of mock-ups multiple times, so the same angle, the same like rock structure, stuff like that, the shoe at the same angle. So showing it a lot of times, again, it does kind of establish some fatigue from a viewer. So finding some different angles, finding some different deliverables. Maybe this is a social post, maybe it's a website. Instead of it just being images of the shoes, finding some different ways to really vary that, show that it's a cohesive brand system across multiple touch points. It's not just about the shoes or the renders. And then so down here, it looks like you've actually put a full brand system deck into here. So that's pretty cool that you can actually click through and look at the entire deck. I think you've got some really strong typography in this deck as far as like the hierarchy you're establishing here. It all does feel very on brand to what we've seen so far. With this being a 61 slide deck, it probably is way too big for someone to actually sit here and go through all 61 slides. So you might be better served kind of showcasing the 5 slides that you think are the most impactful, showing them in a small grid view where you show off a ton of the slides, but then some close-ups of 5 to 10 of your favorite slides from the deck that you think make the biggest impact. Because again, I don't think many people are actually going to sit here and scroll through all 61 of these slides. So I think you probably have better luck kind of curating that list for them instead of kind of expecting them to scroll through the entire deck. But I do like what I'm seeing here, so I think there's a lot of great stuff to showcase. I would just make that choice for the viewer. And so as I'm looking through these are beautiful 3D renderings, beautiful shots, but I'm kind of noticing that I'm only 60% through this project. So this is a huge project. It takes a ton of time to get through this, to look through it legitimately. So I would suggest paring this down. I do think it's great to show off all the work, all the context that you have here, but finding a way to make it more succinct, to really make those decisions. These are the 20 most impactful images from this case study. These are the most impactful slides. This is the information that I want my viewers to come away from this case study with. I think that would go a long way, because again, most people are not going to sit here and scroll through a case study that's this long. They're going to kind of scroll through a little bit of it. They're going to exit out and go to the next thing. So I would make sure when they're doing that, they're only seeing the best images that you want them to see. This packaging is really, really cool. Again, very on brand, very cyberpunk. It's great that you've kind of thought through that element of the design as well. And then with the chains and the smoke, that's pretty cool. And then you've even got some merch here. I think it's great that this is animated. It's very interesting. The fact that it is a Vimeo, it looks like this one stopped and just kind of spit me out to look at more of your project. So that's something I would fix, is just make these into GIFs that infinitely loop instead of showcasing kind of the Vimeo UI. I think this one on the left maybe is doing what you're intending. So maybe just fix the one on the right there to do the same thing. All right, now we've got like a website layout here. So these are nice mock-ups, like the angled view you have. You're showing off that product design packaging again. We're seeing like where you could actually buy the shoe. You're showing off that it's responsive. So you're hitting all the right points. Again, there's just way too much here. So I would certainly pare it down, think about what the most impactful images would be. And then when we get down here to the bottom, it just kind of ends. There's nothing else down here. So like we talked about in that previous portfolio, it was nice how they had a section at the bottom that led me into the next project, that made it really easy for me to keep browsing. I would also suggest adding a footer down here, just reiterating your name, the pages, giving them a nice big contact button to where if they liked this project, they like what they saw, they can get in touch with you. Just because whenever they get to the bottom here, now either they have to scroll all the way back up to the top, or they have to use your escape hatch to go to the home page and then scroll back down, find the next project. So just not the best UX there. So I would definitely kind of improve that UX. But overall, I really like how clean everything is. I like your approach to design. You've got some really interesting, engaging looking thumbnails here. I love the mock-ups you used in the Vora project. I love the 3D modeling that you did. So I can tell you're a good designer. You have some really strong work here. I would say overall, you just need to kind of pare things down, make it more succinct, and really curate what you want me to see on your website. But great job, Solwhi. Thanks for sending it in. All right, next up, we've got Troy Norman. I really like The first impression you're making here, you've got a small professional image of your face, so I can kind of like put a face to the name. You're introducing yourself, so it's friendly. And then you're giving us a quick elevator pitch saying, I design scalable systems and visuals for digital products that help brands look sharper, speak louder, and grow smarter. You've got tons of white space. It's not distracting. It's not over the top. So a really strong hero section here, really nice introduction to your site. And then again, you've got some images above the fold here, so it makes it interesting to, makes me want to scroll down to see more. There's a nice strong thumbnail image here. It's well selected, well art directed. I like that you have a hover effect. It's subtle, but it lets me know that when I click this, something's gonna happen. Adds a little bit of motion to your site. And then I really like that you're using more of a case study approach to naming these projects. So instead of just saying, this is work for X client, you're saying redefining corporate gifting management, streamlining how businesses manage gifting programs through an improved admin experience. So instead of just clicking into this and being like, this is a website, this is a UI dashboard, whatever the case may be, you're kind of selling it. You're telling a story already before I even click into it. So I think that's a great way to make case studies more engaging, more storytelling instead of just being about the deliverables, right? So I really like that approach there. Again, another nice thumbnail here. It looks like there's another like rock off to the side here. So I'm guessing maybe that's part of your like brand approach to your thumbnails is like having these organic shapes. And this one's really cool that you actually designed something that was produced at a trade show in real life, like this gift box building thing you've built here is super cool that it's opening on top. I do think the lighting here is a little bit dim compared to your other shots that are very vibrant. So I think just doing some photo editing here to kind of bring up the colors, bring up the contrast, bring up the exposure a little bit, just make it feel a little bit more in line with the vibrancy of these other thumbnails you have here to make sure it doesn't stand out would be one tweak I would make there. And then, yeah, there's another thumbnail down here. It really jumps off the page with the orange background. Feels very SoundCloud. So I really like the thumbnails that you've chosen for your projects. And then down here at the bottom, you've got a nice footer. You're kind of selling a little bit. You're saying, got a project that needs some polish, making it easy to contact you. I can click here. I could copy and paste your email address, and then a simple navigation for me to jump around. So perfect footer down there that kind of tells me what to do next. So let's take a look at this first project. So first impression, again, I like this image that you've chosen. It definitely draws me and it makes me want to learn more. I do think since this is the first thing you see and there's no context on the screen, it's a little bit jarring that it's just an image. So maybe you do have like the client name or a title of some kind that's visible when you first click into a case study. Because again, I think just having the image here, while it's great to start with a nice image to draw us in, I do think a little bit of context just to let us know that we're in the right place, set the table for what we're going to see without having to scroll down would be nice. Scrolling down here, I do like that you are immediately getting into the overview. So you're kind of talking about the client, the results. I love that you're calling out the metrics. You're really making that a point to drive that home. You're giving us, again, some more metric call outs here that animate on. So I think that's really powerful. And then you're touching on who they are and what your goal was. So I think that's a really great start to the project. Again, I think maybe just adding some of those like really high level tidbits up here would just kind of let me know I'm in the right place. And then I really like what you have following there as far as the overview goes. Getting into the work here, it feels a little bit less engaging now that we're into kind of the body of the case study. This mid-gray background, I feel like isn't really doing you a lot of favors as far as making this an engaging UI. So maybe putting this more similar to what you have here, where it's living on a screen, making the background a bit more brand appropriate as far as like what sort of brand imagery does this company use, maybe using some like angling, some lighting, stuff like that. The gray just feels a little bit oppressive to the UI that you have here, and it's a little bit distracting. So maybe changing out that background could be helpful. I love that you're framing the project in this approach of the challenge and the solution. I think that's really powerful to show kind of the before state. What were you trying to accomplish with this project? And then what sort of discoveries did you make? How did you implement that into the solution? So I think that's a really powerful way to kind of frame everything you have here. And I also like that you're drip feeding us the information too, where it's not just everything at the very beginning, like an overabundance of information that maybe people don't want to read all at once. You're kind of breaking it up into sections to make it easier for people to digest. You see an image, you get some information, image information. So I think that's really nice to break things up as well. So again, this is a nice, simple, clean UI, but I think you could kind of really bring it to the next level with this background, with a mock-up, with some close-up detail shots. As it is, just very flat. It's not really like drawing me in necessarily, so maybe something to improve there. Again, you're drip feeding information here, talking about your research and your insight, so I think that's really powerful. It shows that you're not just a designer, but you're a problem solver, right? So you are uncovering problems and discovery, you're interacting with users, you're figuring out the why behind what you are building, and then you're using those insights to educate the final designs, the final decision. So I think that's really powerful to show that you're not just a pair of hands, that you're actually thinking through problems and you're actually solving things. So I love that you've included that. And then kind of in that same vein, you're now sharing like flow maps of the user journey. So I think that's great that you're showing the process, you're showing the end result and the research and the process behind it. Here you're sharing more of kind of like the iterations, the things you learned from the lo-fi prototype. So again, I love seeing your thought process. I do think for a case study, you could probably very quickly take these lo-fi prototypes and make them better looking still. I know that they're lo-fi prototypes, but with this being a case study, you can just kind of take these in the Figma very quickly, make them a bit more attractive, a bit more fleshed out. Why not show off your UI UX chops in your case study, even for a lo-fi layout? And now we're getting into the hi-fi designs here. So again, like we've talked about, show some more of those close-ups, the detail shots, break out kind of the small UI elements that you've designed that you're really proud of, add some really nice mock-ups, add some angled shots, add some lighting, just bring these UI elements to life to really make them engaging, because it's great to show off the work flat as a whole piece, but also we want to show off the details up close as well. Okay, so here we go. We're starting to see some more of what I've been talking about down here at the bottom. So I would say use a bit more of this approach to your mockups alongside the flat version. Just again, keep it interesting, keep things visually appealing. And then I love that you're reiterating the outcome here as well. This is a really nice solution because sometimes people want to save the outcome to the end because logically the project is now finished. Now you want to talk about what the results were. So I think it's great that you have it here to reiterate that. But I also love that you had it at the beginning because I think the results and the outcome is so important that it's a shame to hide it at the end of the case study. People might not make it to the end, so then they don't see the incredible results that you got. So I think this is a really nice solution that you had it at the beginning and you have it again at the end. You've got some great metrics that you're really proud of. So absolutely, that's a great call to have them multiple times. And this is really nice too, where you have final thoughts. So key takeaways, things you learned. I think that shows that you have a growth mindset. You're someone that doesn't think they know everything, that you're willing to grow. So I think that's a really cool section to include as well. And then you're kicking us into the next case study. So you're making it really easy for me to keep going if I like what I saw. So that's a really nice solution to that. And then again, I think your footer is touching on all the key points if I just want to get in contact with you. So I think this is a really nice balance of the work, jumping into the next project, the footer that allows me to get in touch with you. So a really nice layout and a really nice approach to your case studies UX. So overall, Troy, I love the portfolio. I love how clean it is, how easy it is to navigate. I love the images that you have here for your thumbnails on the homepage. I would recommend just kind of taking this approach of quality and like art directing these mock-ups, using that more so in the case study instead of just having the flat UI on the flat gray background. I think you could elevate those images to really show off the incredible work that you did, but love the metrics, love the outcome, love all the sections you included. So overall, really strong work. Great job. All right, next up we have Morgana Tatton. So first off, this is very different, very interesting. I don't often see portfolio sites that make me laugh out loud. So that's very memorable that your header is literally just you scrolling through your own portfolio website. That's pretty funny. So I can tell that you're a character, you don't take yourself too seriously. You can see that into the design as well. So I think that makes this really memorable and really stands out off the bat. So scrolling down here, I like that you're kind of giving us that elevator pitch. You're a UX UI designer. You love crafting delightful user experiences that achieve business goals. I do think that this color change to being this blue behind the green makes this text very difficult to read, especially delightful here. So being a UX UI designer, that's really important that you're taking into account accessibility, legibility, usability. So I would definitely change your contrast ratios there to make sure that the text stays legible. Obviously, when it's white background, it's really easy to read, but as soon as it goes to that blue background, it becomes problematic. So something to think about there. It looks like this next video is just kind of you moving around in Figma, which again, very silly and playful and just kind of something that you don't often see. You're really showing off the nitty-gritty behind the scenes, not finished product. So I think that's a lot of fun. It does feel a little bit random where you currently have it, where there's no context for what I'm looking at. It's just this video of kind of images. I'm guessing maybe this was like the mood board for your website, but I think you need to tell us that, right? So it's not just a random video, that we understand the tongue-in-cheek silliness of it, but it still has a purpose. So I would add a little bit of context there. And now we're getting into case studies. It looks like you're just actually jumping into the case study itself. I thought these would be like thumbnails where I could kind of choose what I want to look at, but it seems like it's just a list of full-on case studies on your homepage. So that's something I would change, is instead of just jumping straight into your case studies as one long page, I would do kind of more of a traditional, like a grid layout or something like that, that has thumbnails that allows me to choose which projects are most relevant to me as a viewer, as a hiring manager, because the order you have might not be the order that I want them to be, right? So kind of forcing people to go through this in one really long scroll isn't super pleasant. I would say there needs to be some sort of way to kind of skip through these in a different approach. I think in that same vein, you have a lot of videos here, which again, I think is fun, but it does become kind of overwhelming when this header is a video that's animating and this is another video that's animating. I think it's too much motion, and so I think it's just too much of a good thing, right? It goes from being engaging to being distracting. So I would think more intentionally about how you're using motion to really draw people's eye to where you want it to go, to really showcase work that you're really proud of. And so kind of paring that down. And then also coming up with like a really nice thumbnail image that sells each project, that really draws you in, that shows off the best of the UI UX on an art directed, really attractive mock-up of some kind. So I love that you have a testimonial here. So I think that's something more designers should have, is social proof. Anytime that you can get a quote from a client talking about what a great job you did, I think that adds so much value to a case study to really drive home how successful the project is and how great you are to work with as a designer. So kudos to you for that. And then I love that you have the project solution outcome approach to information. Maybe this is a little bit late in the project to be presenting this information. I think we've already looked through like a number of images and flowcharts and things like that. So having that just a bit higher up could be helpful. So that way, all these images, I kind of know what I'm looking at. And again, with all this motion, it's kind of unclear what I'm looking at in some of these videos. You really have to sit here and watch it and think about each one to digest it. So making it a bit more digestible with statics that are close-ups of each step of the like UX flow would be really helpful. I do like that you're giving us like the opportunity to read more in depth. So it sounds like that's not the full case study. Okay, so you're taking us to like your Medium page to really learn more about the project. So I think that's an interesting approach. It's nice that when you do have this single scrolling page, at least you didn't do the full case study, you kind of kept it more brief. So I think that was a smart choice there. And then here, this is definitely a better job of like a more engaging video that you're using for your hero image. But I still do think we are suffering from too much motion here. And so we're seeing another testimonial. So that's incredible. I do like that you're kind of bolding and highlighting certain text to make it easier for people to skim this information, but still kind of pick up on the main points. And then you're making it easy to get in touch with you too. If I liked this case study, I can just jump straight to your contact form. So I think that's smart as well. So again, I think these case studies are too much to ask someone to scroll through on the homepage, But once we do get through those, you're kind of getting into client. So I think that's a great way to add more social proof. Again, once we get down to the read my recommendations section, this is really hard to read on this pale yellow background. So the transitioning color sections, while they are very fun, it is causing some UX accessibility issues there. So might want to kind of change when they transition, or potentially like tone down some of the colors that you're using. And then down here, this is great that you have so many recommendations from different people. I think that's awesome. It is just kind of like a block of like a wall of text. So I would maybe make this into a slider where it's just like one testimonial at a time, and then it slides to the right and you have another one. Just kind of making the information easier for people to parse through, where you're kind of choosing what they look at. You're more controlling their vision and where they're looking, and not overloading them with information. I think that's kind of an overarching critique I would have for you there. Then it is nice that you have your experience down here, so a bit of like a mini resume. This might serve you better on an about page instead of having it again on this home page. This is a really long single page scroll here, so I would kind of chunk everything up into easier to digest information, put it onto different pages, give the user a bit more autonomy as far as how they want to get around your website. And this is really funny that for the contact form at the bottom, you just have a video of someone filling in the contact form again. So you're making me laugh. It's funny that you're just taking such a silly approach. Obviously, it's a lot of fun to work with you, and you don't take yourself too seriously. Again, from a usability standpoint, seeing a duplicate of the contact form beside the contact form could be confusing, especially on the same blue background here. So maybe putting this into like a silly, like a CRT monitor mockup or something like that, just to make it more obvious that this is meant to be like a joke, it's a video, and make it a bit less confusing for people seeing these two forms side by side. But Morgana, overall, this is one of the most unique portfolios I've seen. It's incredibly memorable for sure. It definitely stands out. It's not clinical by any stretch of the imagination. So thanks so much for sharing this and having the courage to design something that's outside of the box. Certainly that can be scary, especially as a UI UX designer where things are generally very kind of white and clinical. You've certainly gotten away from that. So I think it's a lot of fun, and hopefully inspires some people to do the same. So thanks for sending us in. All right, the next portfolio we'll be taking a look at is Morgan Silva. So I would say this is probably the most common approach to a portfolio, where it's just your name, a navigation, and just a grid of work that links to case studies. And I think it works really well. It's simple, it's to the point, it's not trying to do too much, it's putting the focus on the work, it's making it really easy to see your skill set and get around the website. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with this approach. I will say it would be nice to have a little bit of an elevator pitch here where I can learn a bit more about you before I start clicking into projects, just to learn like what sort of designer are you? Who do you work with? Are you a junior, mid-level, or senior? So that's an area that I might consider adding. As far as the thumbnails go, I think they're all very attractive. They're all very colorful. You've got some animation in there that's kind of drawing my eyes. All of your projects feel a little bit different, but it still all feels cohesive because you're using kind of the same approach of photorealistic, high quality mock-up. So I think that's working really well. Let's take a look at the Canvas Pop branding project. So this is a nice mock-up you've chosen here of some like out-of-home advertising. It does a nice job of drawing you in with all the color. It does make me curious to kind of look at the rest of the project. It's nice that you're giving us information right off the bat. It's a brand refresh for Canvas Pop. You handled branding, creative direction, and design. So you're giving us all those little tidbits right off the bat with all this white space over here on the right. Not that there's anything wrong with white space, but maybe this could be a good area to even add a little bit more context, talking about the goals, the results, the outcomes, the metrics, things like that. You could give us a little bit more context right here at the beginning, and you already kind of have a spot that would work to do that. So that's something to think about there. Here, we're just kind of jumping right into the brand system. So you're using circular as the font. We're seeing some lorem ipsum with some colors. So it's great to show this behind the scenes, kind of like your design process and the typography and colors and stuff like that. But I would add some prompting for people, right? Say, here's the typography system, here's the fonts we use, here's why we chose them, here's the colors we chose, here's why we chose them. When you just kind of start with that, if a non-designer is looking at this, they might be confused and not really sure what circular is, what lorem ipsum is, why is this in Latin, right? So I would just add a little bit more context here. Starting off with it is just maybe a little bit too in the weeds for people that aren't designers. This is really cool seeing all the textures that are part of the brand. It's very attention grabbing, a ton of color, a ton of texture here. It can be challenging to use so many different like textures and colors, but make things feel cohesive. And I think overall, you've done a good job of that. And I think that's even more successful here in these little icon marks of the sea. I think the texture is working really well and the colors work really well here. Again, this could be another opportunity just to kind of tell us what this is, right? Are these social media icons? Why are they all different? Why did you choose these patterns? What was your thought process? So you have some great looking images, but you're not really telling me what they are or why you designed them the way that you did. So I think you have some opportunities there to add more context. Something else down here I'm realizing is that you never told us like what Canvas Pop is. So you say design your world, but I don't really know what that means. Is Canvas Pop a design program? Is it like artwork that you can purchase? I don't have that context because I don't know the brand name. So I'm not really sure how to put this work into context. What does the tagline mean? Is it successful? So I do think you need to add a bit more context as far as who the company is, what this project is, why you made the decisions that you made. This is a really nice mock-up you have here of the website. I really like the image that you've chosen here. It does feel on brand with like the textures kind of aligning with the textures that we've seen so far. I love that you're showing us some social activations here. So it's not just a logo, but you've kind of thought through the whole brand system. It has a lot of different touch points. This is a 360 campaign, so I love to see that. This like office front is really cool that you thought through even like a physical space beyond just digital. And this is great. You've thought through the packaging as well. This does feel a little bit less successful from a mock-up standpoint than the other ones. The lighting just feels a little bit artificial here. It feels a little bit 3D. So I would maybe rework this mock-up to match the quality of the other ones that you have. But I do like that you're thinking through physical packaging. And then after we see kind of all of that work, now you're getting into an alternate concept. So that's interesting that I'm guessing maybe this first one is the client accepted brand refresh. And maybe this one was just like a pitched version that didn't get accepted. So it is a little bit maybe aggressive to kind of present it as another full case study within the case study. Maybe just show off really quickly, like this is another direction it didn't get chosen, but here's why I went with these decisions. Maybe make it a bit more of a byline instead of really featuring the work. My thought there really is that your portfolio, these case studies are a place for you to showcase the best of the best, right? So this is my best work. This is the decision I made that made this project successful. So when you're pitching two completely different concepts and you showcase both of them in totality, it makes it feel like you didn't necessarily have a point of view, that you were happy with both directions. And so I think it's nice to like make a decision to say, this is the best work I want in the portfolio, and not showing off like too many different points of view. Going back to your homepage here, like I've talked about before, I would say 6 to 8 projects is kind of that sweet spot. So you do have quite a few case studies here. So maybe thinking about a few of them that you feel like aren't your best work, maybe considering removing those just to keep things really tight, to make sure that you're not showing off anything that you're not 100% proud of. That might be something to think about there. And then even kind of going beyond that, I see you have an extras section here, which is a fun thing to include. I've seen a lot of designers do that, where not everything has to be a case study. Sometimes you just make a cool logo for a friend and you want to show it off, but you don't really have a good place to put it. So I think this is a fun section to do that. It does go back to that idea of showing off potentially too much sometimes can be less attractive than showing off just the best of the best. So potentially another section here that could be pared down just to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. So overall, I think you have some really strong work here, Morgan. I would say add some more context to the case studies, add some more context even to the homepage with like an elevator pitch. Tell us about who you are, what you do, what your approach is in the project. Kind of walk us through what the project is, why it was successful, who did you design it for, why did you make the decisions that you made? And I think that'll really bring this to the next level, but great work. Okay, so next up we have Lindsay Thompson. So first impression here is that your thumbnails are doing some really heavy lifting. I think they're really engaging. I think you're doing a great job of showcasing your skill set just through these thumbnails. I think it's the right amount of motion. It's the right amount of information. The text is really easy to read and professional, and the work looks really quality. So great first impression here. I really like what I'm seeing. As I've touched on a few times, an elevator pitch up here might be really nice to just let me know what your specialties are. I would also absolutely include a contact of some type. So up here in the top right, just an icon allowing me to email you, or a contact form. That's kind of the main purpose of a portfolio website, right? Is to sell what you can do and then get people to contact you to work with you. So that's a change I would make there. But I really want to check out these case studies you have. This Good Judy skate kit looks really cool. First off, I love the font you're using for your portfolio. It feels very unique. It kind of stands out. You're using like a really clean body font to make it easy to read, which is nice. But then your titles have some character to them, which again, in this day and age where a lot of people are making very clinical portfolios that are very straightforward, it's refreshing to see people kind of showing some personality, taking a stance, choosing some fonts. And obviously that matches your wordmark font as well. So you've established a bit of a brand there that feels a little bit more handmade, and you're carrying that through. So I think that's really strong. So it looks like this is a student project from the overview you've provided here, but certainly the work looks very professional. This stop motion GIF you have here is a lot of fun. It really matches that like skater zine collage approach you've been using for the design. So I think that is a really nice carry through there. It looks like you actually printed all this stuff out and actually built out the packaging. So it's cool to see the real world example of this coming to life. I don't quite understand like the push-pull here in the box, so maybe adding some more context to what I'm actually looking at there would be helpful to see why you made that design decision. And I think also with this piece, you could just add some more images here, like show me the details of these layouts, have some close-up mock-ups of it, some close-up photos. It just looks like you've created some really nice graphics here, and it's a little bit hard to see them in these smaller images. So I would kind of expand this to show a little bit more there. At the bottom, I like that you are leading us into other projects. You're making it easy to keep going. So next I'll take a look at the Peggy Browning Fun brand identity. I like the 2-column approach you're using for your case studies here. So it allows us to see this like really nice, beautiful image of the stationery, but then also we're able to read the information as we do that. So I think that's a really successful approach. And then you're also getting us all the information we need about the organization, your role, the goal, the client, and then the team you worked with. I think including a before and after is a great idea for case studies. Just for people that aren't familiar with the brand that you're showcasing, it kind of allows them to see the evolution that you've brought to the project, the impact that you've made. And so before and after is a really visual way to do that. This is really cool that you're showing off not only the typography system and the colors, but then the inspiration for that being these like protest signs. And then we're seeing how that brand system is applied to a number of different touch points. The logo cutout on the front of this booklet is really nice. And this is a great photo here, seeing it in the real world. So I think that's always really important, is to show off not just the spreads from like a top down, but then showing it more at like angles and beautiful art directed photos. And then you're giving us a little bit more here from like the social account, how that comes across in the feed, as well as like a tote bag, which every great case study needs. So I think this is a really nice case study here that you've kind of shown us a full 360 campaign, the before, the after. You're talking about your design decisions, the goals of the project. So I think this is a really successful case study overall. Nice work. So Lindsay, I think you have some really incredible work here. I love the thumbnails. I can tell you're a great designer. I would just add a contact form to this. I would add a little bit more context about who you are, your approach. And then for the Good Judy skate kit, I would add some more context in there from an image standpoint, showing off all that great work that you did. All right, next up we have Uyen Truong, a graphic designer specializing in editorial design, marketing collateral, and brand identity. They say their work ranges from lifestyle magazines, fashion labels, community organizations, to the education sector. So I think that is a great elevator pitch. I know exactly who you are and what you do. And then I like the font you've chosen here as well. It does feel very editorial. So it definitely stands out. It gives it a lot of character. Coming down and looking at your thumbnails, I like you have a little bit of motion here. These colors are really standing out on the gray background, so that's working really well. As far as the information you're giving us with the brand name and then like the role you played for each one of these, that's a really nice way for me to know which case studies I want to take a look at. So I like that approach. It would be nice if there was a hover effect on these, just so that way I kind of know which one I'm hovering over. With the like pastel colors you're using on some of the thumbnails on the beige background, it does kind of bleed together. So that would be a nice UX improvement there. And then for this first thumbnail, the motion is a little bit unnatural. It feels a little bit linear. So that would be an area for improvement just for this thumbnail, just to make that motion a little bit more natural, a little bit more professional. And then down here at the bottom, I like that you're giving us the social proof of clients that you've worked with. That's a really nice section to include. I would recommend adding a footer that just lets me get into contact with you with your email address or a contact form. Again, if I like the work I'm seeing, I'm a potential client, I just want to know how to reach out to you to work with you. Let's take a look at In Psych Out here. I like the information you're starting us off with as far as just giving us context about the project, who the company is, the challenge, and the solution. You have that like 2-column layout going, which is really nice. For this video you have playing here, it kind of always has the timeline with the pause button showing at all times. That's a little bit distracting when it's front and center on that video a lot of the time. So maybe figuring out a different video player that gets rid of that UI element so it's not covering up the logo. And then I also do think this white background you're using for a lot of the text, it's cool from like a title text standpoint, like it's very stylized, but from a body text standpoint, it's a little bit distracting where the white background is kind of cramping the text where there's no margin or padding. And then the white is so similar to that beige, it almost starts feeling like a mistake, or it just becomes a little bit distracting. So giving the text some padding, I think, would help a lot. Just making that white background holding shape a bit more intentional looking. As far as the design itself, I like the logo that you have here. It's very organic. I like that it's kind of interacting, the colors are interacting together. I would probably remove this old logo here just because it is so unfinished, like a doodle. It doesn't feel like it was a professional company, so I would probably just remove that completely and just not even address it. I like that you're showing us the brand guidelines from a bird's eye view so we can see the scope of everything that you included in those guidelines. It does feel a little bit flat, so maybe adding some shadows, removing the stroke on these, making it feel a little bit more realistic would help it kind of jump off the page a little bit more. It's great to see your thought process with the color palette and the fonts, so we're seeing a bit of the behind the scenes. I love all these primary shapes, so it looks like you can probably mix and match those. So that's great that you've created a system of illustrations. I think this is really successful. I love, again, how organic they are, how they interact with one another. It's very painterly. And then this is really cool to see like how it actually is used within the brand. So it's used as holding shapes for profile images and things like that. So I think that's very successful as well. For this video, instead of having it be static and making me press play, I would just have it auto playing as a GIF or a silent movie, similar to what you've done for these other ones. Just since this is the only one that it seems like I have to click play on, it's something that someone could miss. And that's great, you're showing us the full 360, so we're seeing the web, it's responsive on mobile, you did a social campaign. Again, with these mock-ups, I would make them more engaging. They're a little bit flat, they're a little bit just kind of put on a straight-on computer screen, so add some lighting, add a background, angle them, just make them a bit more interesting to look at. And then same thing for these social posts. I think it's great to see them high level in this way, but then also show them on a phone, show it in the feed, show the work in context. That way people kind of know where this lives. Maybe everyone's not as experienced with social to where they don't know that that's what this is, right? So just help them along to kind of understand what it is and make it look as beautiful as possible. Down here, I would say this like booklet stack on the shelf isn't super successful. I think it's great that you do have the booklets, but this photo isn't really doing the work justice. The shelf is kind of like blocking the shapes. So I'd probably get rid of this mock-up or choose a different photo that does a bit of a better job showcasing the booklet design itself. I think this image beside it is a lot more successful at doing that. And then down here, these blog posts feel very disconnected to me from the rest of the brand that you've been showing us. So far the work has been very consistent as far as having these color palettes, these painterly shapes that are interacting. It's very like primary colors. And then down here, the fonts are all different. The colors are all different. The illustration style has changed. So I would probably remove these or rethink them to make them look more cohesive with the rest of the brand, just to, again, kind of drive home that this is 360. We touched all these different points. They're all very consistent now, because right now these feel a bit disconnected. So checking out your hemp-based beauty project, I think here you're doing a much nicer job of using mock-ups that are kind of like adding to the artwork, right? So these 3D phones, they're stylized. It's not just like an iPhone. I think that's really cool. It matches the kind of feminine approach of the brand. You're showing the social feed on a phone on the Instagram page. So again, you're adding context. So I think this case study is a lot more successful as far as just how to approach your mock-up. So you're already doing it. I would just apply this approach to the other case study as well. And I really love like the illustrations you've done here overlaid on the images. I think that's working really nicely. The pink and green is interacting really well together. And then I do like that you're incorporating motion here in this hero section as well. I think that's really nice to draw us in. I do think like the 3D is kind of getting exposed on the corners here when it spins. The phones then become flat. It looks a little bit unpolished. So I would use a different mock-up that either doesn't go full flipping around to where we can see that it's flat, or uses like actual 3D phones. There's so many great mock-ups available to us. We always want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward. So that's a slight change I would make there. But I do think this is a really strong case study. I really love the work. You have a great eye for like color and illustration and how to combine those elements together to create a cohesive brand. So awesome work. All right, next up we have Habibi Salim. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And so Habibi has a PDF portfolio, which they mentioned that's the expected way to deliver a portfolio in their country. So absolutely think that's a valid approach. Even in the States, if for whatever reason you can't get a website out there, you don't want to get a website out there, a PDF is still a valid way to go about it. So I think this will be really great to showcase for people that don't want a website, or it's just not the norm where you live. I think this will be a great way to showcase how that can come to life. So the first impression here, it's very designery. I like the colors, I like the fonts you've chosen, I like the amount of white space. Feels very professional. Here on your intro slide, which I do like that you are introducing yourself, you're giving us some context as far as like who you are, your approach, your work experience, your certificates, and your background from an education standpoint. I think that's a great way to start. I do think over here on the left, centering all this text is making it a bit difficult to read. So I would left align everything here. And then this image also feels a bit like it's in no man's land. So maybe centering that, or maybe moving down this top text a little bit, making sure everything is on a grid. Just making sure anytime you have a big body text area that it's left aligned, just to make it easier to read, similar to what you've done over here on the right side. I think that would help make this more legible. This table of contents is really nice, so it tells us what to expect, what's coming up. It lets us know what pages to jump to if we want to see a certain project. Maybe making these clickable would be nice, just so that way I could jump straight to them from this table of contents. Would be a nice UX upgrade there. This is a really striking project to start off on. So I like this like huge pop of color. It's very in your face. I think the fonts over here are working really well. I think the hierarchy is nice. I like that you're giving credits. You're giving a little bit of information about the project itself, and then also giving us this really nice, attractive image here as well to make us want to keep going through the project. So here you're kind of introducing us to this typeface. I really like the background element here of this 45-degree angle, since that is an important part of the typeface and all these cuts you see. So I think that's really clever to tie that in. I love these little callouts down here saying it's display, it's wide, it's bold, geometric. So very quickly, even if I'm skimming, I'm kind of understanding your approach to this typeface, what it's meant to accomplish, what it's supposed to look like. So I think you've done a great job of making this skimmable. It's really cool seeing how the typeface could be used like on a poster here, using some artwork. I think it's really successful from how it's interacting. And then over here, you're talking about the inspiration for different ways that the letters interlock. So this is really strong. And then even more mock-ups here of how it could live on apparel or magazine cover. So this is a really cool cyberpunk type project. I could absolutely see this on apparel and stuff like that. So I think this is a really successful case study. You're showing us the typeface close up, you're showing it zoomed out, you're showing it on well art directed images, on posters. Everything feels very cohesive. It's all kind of that like bright backlit studio with black apparel with really stark colors. The red keeps appearing here. So even though it's a typeface, you're establishing a brand, and that's definitely coming through. With this image, I'm having a hard time understanding what I'm looking at. I think it might be like a storefront or something, but I'm not entirely sure. So this one could maybe use a bit of context so I know what I'm looking at, and then maybe like some zoomed in shots of the details here, just because it does feel like a lot's going on, and generally it looks visually interesting. I'm just not exactly sure what it is. And then scrolling through, I was drawn to this Dieter Rams tribute. He's probably my favorite designer, so I was really interested to check this one out. So it looks like this is a student project you did where you compiled some of his product design language in a vector form with some extra bits. So maybe that description could be a little bit more actionable, a bit more goal oriented. It's a little bit on the nose. I'm not sure what extra bits are. I'm not sure what the purpose of this was. So maybe thinking about that in a different lens would be helpful just for people who are viewing this from a business perspective. Looks like you've done some really beautiful recreations of some of his more famous designs here, thinking through them as postcards and mailers and things like that. So I think that is really successful. Seeing all the different bits stacked into this little like folder here is really attractive. And then this card pullout looks really nice. I can tell it's minimal. I like the grid that you've established for the typography. Talking about the fact that like these holes are physical holes to allow you to see through to the inserted materials. That's a really nice touch. Then here you're showing the inspiration alongside the print layouts. So that's great for people that might not be as familiar with Dieter Rams, that they can kind of see what you're illustrating, what you're getting at there. So I think this is a really cool tribute project that tells me a lot about you as a designer based on the fact that you made this about Dieter Rams, but then also that you executed it with respect and really thought through all those fine details. So I think this is a really nice case study as well. And then here at the end, you have a really nice finishing slide where you give us your email address, your contact information, your Behance, your Instagram. So I think that's really successful as well, that if they liked what they saw in the rest of the portfolio, you've made it really easy to reach out to you to work with you. So I think this is a really great example of a PDF portfolio, how to lay it out, how to be successful, how to approach the work, the right amount of information to include. So really well done on this one, Habibi. All right, and the next portfolio we have here is Kayla Gilbert. First off, I see her using a ReadyMag domain name. There's nothing wrong with that, but I definitely would recommend getting a professional domain name whenever you can spare I think it's 10 to 12 bucks a year for most .com domains. It does just add a level of professionalism if you're applying to full-time jobs or trying to get freelance clients. It just tells them that you're actively working, that you're making money doing this, that you're serious about it. So not a huge deal, but something I would recommend. It's fun that you're using a star cursor here. You've like replaced the cursor. I do like that adds a bit of personality to it. It is a little bit challenging to know where you're actually clicking. I'm not sure what part of the star is the cursor. So from a UX standpoint, small accessibility thing there. As I've been a bit of a broken record here, but starting with an elevator pitch about who you are and what you do would be nice. From a thumbnail standpoint, I really like your thumbnails. They're very eye-catching. They're simple, but they do have like focal points that are usually like the brand names. You're using some really well-chosen mock-ups here. So really engaging thumbnails that make me want to click into the project. I like the typography, is just very simple, easy to read. It's nice and big without being too large. It looks like down here at the bottom, you do have an About Me section, so it's great you have that. I might put a shortened version of this up at the top instead of having it down here at the bottom, just because at this point, it feels like it might be a little too late. I already know, if I've already looked through all these projects, I already know all this stuff about you for the most part, right? I know what sorts of things you do, like your approach to design. So putting this at the top might be a bit more effective there. And down here at the bottom, it's nice that you're linking your social accounts, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, get in touch for your email. For your email, it looks like you're using a Hotmail account. So I would definitely change that to a more professional email account. Either if you do get a domain name, you could put your name at your domain name, or even just using Gmail or something like that. Hotmail is generally just kind of like a personal email address. So it would help make it seem more professional to change that. And let's click into your Omira project here. So this is a great hero image. It's very striking. I like the motion. It's very stylized. It kind of sets me up for what this brand is going to be about before I even start scrolling. So I think that's really successful. I like this intro section here with the brand name. Welcome to the dark side of wellness. So you're doing a bit of copywriting. It's clever. Again, setting me up for what I'm about to see in the rest of the case study. And then you're hitting on all of the different parts that we'd want to see as far as like an intro. It would be nice to kind of expand on the background and an overview and then take some of that stuff out of the solution, right? So right now you have like the company about section in the solution. So I'm not sure I would put that there. I would kind of break that out into an about the company or an overview section right here beside it. It would also help fill out this white space a little bit. I like the mock-ups you're using here of these cans. This is like a website hero image or something like that. So I like the M is kind of used as a repeating element to create a highlight. So I think that is working really nicely. I like the chrome effect that you've applied to it. The contrast of the organicness of the logo, but then the boldness of this title font is working really well. And you've done a great job of art directing all of the brand photography that you're using here. It feels very cohesive with the black and white, the graininess, kind of the dreamy blurriness that we're seeing here. This animation feels a little bit less polished than everything else you've been showing us so far. Like the animation of the M ball bouncing around feels a little bit unrealistic. So this one I might remove from the project just because everything has been so moody and gritty, and this just feels a little bit cartoony with like the bounce of that M. So this one I'd probably remove. I think it's probably not doing a ton of justice to the rest of the project that you have here that's been so strong. This is great that you're showing off the social grid, so you're showing how the brand comes to life on different touch points. This is a really elegant approach to showing images on a phone to where you're not actually showing off the iPhone, it's just the cutout. You're putting it on the art-directed image, so I think that's really successful. The packaging looks great. This is a nice out-of-home billboard that you've chosen. It's at night, so it's dark, it's gritty, so that matches the overall art direction you've established. This is some really great and funny copywriting you're doing here, bubbles with benefits. I really like that you're thinking through not just the logo and how to put it on things, but you're also thinking about how does this brand come to life? What is its character? What does it sound like? So you're taking it one step further than a lot of designers do. And I think that's really powerful to see. We are starting to get to the point at this point in the project where it is becoming a bit of like mock-up fatigue, where you've shown this logo put on so many different things that it's a little bit overwhelming. So I might tone it back just a little bit to where it's not just so many mock-ups, so many applications. It's great you've thought through all of it, but it does feel a little bit overwhelming. The project becomes a little bit too long, arguably, so maybe pare that down just a little bit. It's like, for example, this is a great mock-up, but we've seen this can a lot of times on different backgrounds, so I'm not sure this one is standing out a lot more than the other applications you've already shown of the can. But overall, that was an incredible project, a great case study, really a masterclass of how to take a logo and apply it to a lot of different mock-ups while making them feel cohesive and art-directed, not disjointed, which is a problem I see a lot of the time. You also had some great copywriting in there, which I think is something more designers need to think about when they're creating case studies, to show it's more than just a logo. And yeah, overall, I think you have a really nice book here. Just think about adding that elevator pitch at the top, buying a domain name, making that email address a little bit more professional, updating your favicon. I think those little details are going to help take this portfolio from good to great. Okay guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're as inspired by these portfolios as I am, and I hope you're walking away with some actionable steps to take to improve your own sites. A huge shout out to all the viewers, the designers that send in your portfolios over on artfulruckus.com, on the graphic design subreddit. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope that the feedback you got is helpful. For those of you that can't get enough and you want to watch more portfolio reviews, I've done a few videos in the past, so I'll link a playlist of those up above and in the description down below. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. Now go out there and make a ruckus.